Fantastic. Okay, so what do we got today? So as usual, I'm going to give an introduction to Compass. It's normally 15 minutes, but I find that I always have to rush through things. So I've given myself a bit more time today, and there may be time for questions if you have any questions about Compass and what it does. Then I'm going to pass over to Alice and Cinnamon, who are going to talk about a project that we're all involved with, funded by Marsden, looking at prisoners who have been released and what their housing plans are and whether stable housing has an impact on their reoffending. I'm then going to talk about a HRC funded project that's coming to an end on child poverty and health, and I'll tell you a little bit about the trials and tribulations of that. Then Natalia and I will talk about socioeconomic index that we have developed after the last 3 censuses at least, called the New Zealand Socioeconomic Index, NZSEI, and the focus of that one really is going to be on how well it has worked this time, given what we know went on with the census in 2018. Then we'll have a lunch break, which is going to be catered through there. Then I'll talk, the afternoon really is devoted to the Better Start National Science Challenge. So I'll give a bit of an overview of what that is, that many of us are involved with at Compass, and some recent findings. And then Steph will talk about work that she's doing at the moment on antidepressant medication use during pregnancy. And Eileen will talk about work that she's completed now on birth modality and education outcomes. And then we'll finish up about 2:45. Okay, so I've introduced some of the members of the Compass, some of them aren't here, but this is the current makeup of Compass. I'm the director, Nicholas Shackleton, who also works at the Social Wellbeing Agency as a deputy director. Roy Leahy, senior research fellow, neither of those are here today. Steph is here as a research fellow. Cinnamon, would you like to put up your hand, please? Cinnamon is here, is going to be giving the first talk with Alice. Eileen, one of our data analysts, is here and giving the final talk, and Martin, who did a lot of the work to prepare for today. He works as a data analyst for us. Liza, who's a student, she's joined us by Zoom. Natalia is also a PhD student with us, who will talk later this morning. And Shu Wang and Charlotte. Charlotte is she's doing honours, or she's doing fourth year project? Fourth year project. And Shu Wang is an honours student. And we used to have a data lab at Compass, then we shifted our building and lost that facility, but we've got one nearby to us at the Public Policy Institute at the University of Auckland. And I'd like to thank them and Jen Curtin and Suzanne Woodward at the Public Policy Institute for allowing us to use their data lab. And a lot of the work that we're going to be presenting today will be using integrated data infrastructure data, work done in that data lab. Okay, so I'll just run you through, this is something, again, I do every year, the things that Compass does, or the type of work Compass does. Okay, so one of the things we've worked on quite a bit is microsimulation. That's where you simulate micro-level units, and the micro-level units that we simulate are people, to see how they develop through time, putting in realistic parameters so that you can change circumstances in their lives and see what happens as an upshot of that. So we've done a bit of work on microsimulation over the years. It started off working in the sort of health services research sector on primary care in the Aging Society and balanced care in the Aging Society, both funded by the HRC. That was before my time. As Peter Davis led those, he was the director of Compass before me. Then when I joined, the Modelling the Early Life course project was just getting underway. And what we did there is we analysed longitudinal data from the very good New Zealand birth cohort studies to work out the pathways for children through life, and then ask questions about what would happen if we intervened here, how would that improve children's behaviour problems, education, what have you. We extended that with the knowledge lab of the early life course, but rather than using estimates from analysed data, we used estimates from the research literature, systematic reviews. That was funded by MB. Then Peter and Roy and Martin worked on a book using longitudinal census data to model New Zealand society. That project was called New Zealand as a Social Laboratory, funded by the Royal Society of New Zealand, James Cook Fellowship. And then as part of the work that you'll hear about this afternoon, we will be doing some simulation on the impact of the interventions that are planned as part of the Better Start National Science Challenge. Okay, probably the main, well, almost certainly the main thing we do at Compass is the whole population data analysis stuff. And this has been helped by the development of the IDI over the past 10 years. But prior to that, we were still doing this work, working with census data and whole population Ministry of Health data. So these are the more recent projects that we're working on. The one at the top, Atepe Rea, that's the Better Start National Science Challenge that I've mentioned already. So as I'll tell you this afternoon, that has kind of 4 themes associated with it, involving education, mental health, and child healthy weight. And we work with those themes as part of a big data theme to analyze whole population data in relation to those issues. Then we were funded on the Child Poverty Project, which we'll talk about later this morning. A project working with Colin Simpson and Andrew Spall, funded by MB, looking to develop some of the social service data that New Zealand has very good social service data, but trying to develop it and make it more available and more readily usable by people. One that we've just got funded to do, and Steph is playing a big role in this one, is funded by the Rockwool Foundation in Denmark, Inequality and Service Uptake. There we're comparing New Zealand and Denmark and the extent to which there is concentration amongst service use. So the proportion of the population that use a lot of the services in particular sectors and whether they're the same people across sectors. We've published on that already with data from New Zealand and data from Denmark, and we're extending that work over a 3-year project. And one that we've just got funded, looking at the impact of chronic disease across the life course. So rather than focus on the chronic disease sufferer, we're focusing on the people around them, their families, their children, their parents, and seeing how they are impacted by chronic disease. And that's funded by MB through the 3 health national science challenges, that is Better Start, Aging Well, and Healthier Lives. Okay, surveys. We do a lot of work on surveys. A big one coming up, actually, is the New Zealand Election Survey. So we're preparing for that now. And that's work done with Jack Vowles here at Victoria University. We do the administration of it. Most of the thinking behind it is done by other people, and the write-up of it is done by other people. But Jack Vowles, Victoria University, Lara Greaves and Jen Curtin at the University of Auckland. But we've done that over the past 4 elections. We're going to do it again. How that works is on the day of the election, mail-out survey goes to a random sample of people from the electoral roll, so they get it after they've voted. And then they respond to a few questions about their voting behaviours and patterns and views and what they think of the various parties. Above that, this is something we do every year, is the International Social Survey Program. We presented on that a couple of times. We had a presentation on religion, on the religion survey that we did. But basically how that works is there's an international group who normally meet every year to discuss the upcoming surveys. We couldn't meet in face-to-face this year because of COVID. And 45 or so countries around the world run the same social science survey every year, but the topic changes from year to year. So you can do, and they repeat on roughly a 10-year cycle. So that's actually the 10-year cycle there. What that means is you can do cross-country comparisons as well as look over time, both within countries and across countries. And it's something that we do every year. But it's actually, one of the difficult ones to find funding for because there's a different topic every year, so there's not an obvious place to fund them. And I do wonder if I need to get a consortium of government people together to say, hey, you're interested in all these things, but not always interested in that particular survey of that year. Can we come up with some funding mechanism for this? But I haven't done that yet. So environment, we've just finished the social inequalities survey, and Royal Society panel that I'm on is going to be using some of those data. We're about to develop the environment survey. We're a bit behind time. We'll get that done later this year. And the health and healthcare survey probably on time in the middle of next year. And developing the family and gender role survey is being developed at the moment by various groups around the world who are involved with the ISSB. And we've run various other surveys as well. We did developed an evaluation survey for the Etu Whānau program, or came up with a plan for develop a evaluation survey for the Etu Whānau program run out of MSD. Focused on families who may have experienced family violence. And then we're in the middle of a project, although the survey hasn't been run yet, called Te Ao Marama Disability Perspective of Town Whaikaha Māori, on the experience of disability in the Māori population in New Zealand. And that's run with colleagues from University of Otago, Wellington here. Okay, and the other thing we do is kind of things that don't fit in the other three, but it's kind of social research, quantitative-based social research that doesn't involve surveys, whole population data analysis, or microstimulation. So we've done various things along these lines. I think Roy, a couple of years ago, presented on Pacific suicide, morbidity, and mortality, based on work with Jemima Tiatia Seath, funded by the HRC. We are still actually working on the Loneliness Across the Life course project, which we presented on, I think, again, 2 years ago. That was funded by a philanthropic fund. Person left money in their will to fund work on loneliness, which is obviously an important topic now. And one thing people always seem to be surprised by, but it's been consistently shown now, is that loneliness is highest in the younger population, not in the older population. And that's what we're showing there, but we're also in the process of publishing a paper looking at the extent to which children who are lonely grow into lonely adults or do not. Oh yes, so yes, we also worked with MSD to do a scoping report to see if it's possible to develop a tikanga strengths-based index for Māori communities across New Zealand. That's work we did with MSD, put in the report the middle of last year, and something more may develop from that. I haven't heard anything yet. Alice and Cinema are going to talk about the stable housing project coming up shortly. And then work that we're doing currently with Nicola Shackleton is using the Dunedin study data, and that's my background too. I did my PhD with the Dunedin study. Looking about well-being in midlife and what childhood factors predict adults in midlife who have high well-being. Okay, so that's kind of what we've got planned for the day. I suppose the other thing I should say, you may or may not have picked up a flyer from outside. We also put on a series of courses at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, under the New Zealand Social Statistics Network. So these, again, have typically been face-to-face courses. We run them in Wellington at Massey University in November, and when we can, we run them in Auckland in February. And there are a series of courses on quantitative and qualitative social science methodology. There's a one-day course on not exactly how to use the IDI data, because we can't go in there to do that, but what the IDI is and a little bit about it and things you need to know preparing for the IDI. And alongside that, there's a course on using SQL, because SQL skills is one thing that people need when they're using the IDI. So that's the other thing, one of the other things that we do. Yeah, so that's Compass, that's our day. We're ahead of time, which is fine. But if you have any questions about the other projects I've mentioned, or how Compass works, or anything else, then fire away. Okay, fantastic. I'm loath to jump ahead to the next presentation yet, just because we've got people joining online. Oh, I bet, has there been any questions via the chat? No questions via the chat, okay. Yes, thank you.
So I know, I don't think you're covering today the International Social Studies Survey, but I'm just wondering how COVID has affected that, because I know you guys all have this very kind of UN type meeting where it's very hard to make decisions on how that's going remotely.
Okay, so it's, yes, you're absolutely right. So the annual meeting is called a General Assembly, and you sit around this big table with your country name in front of you. So you're not there as an individual, you're there representing your country, and you vote on everything. Like survey items, item by item, you vote on, which doesn't produce the best survey, in my view, but it produces the most democratic survey, which I think is their aim. How we've done it this time is that voting has just been done via email. So for instance, there's something I have to get onto is the priority topics for the gender and family roles survey. It's in my inbox to do. But I don't think it's worked. I don't think there's you may think this is a good thing or a bad thing. There hasn't been quite the vigorous debate as there would normally be when you're discussing it face to face, as you can imagine. Because you don't get the backs and forths. So we cancelled the meeting, which was to be in Iceland this year, which I was really looking forward to going to. That's being deferred to next year. So the country that was going to host next year is pushed back a year as well. Whether that or not that goes ahead or not, I'm not sure, but that's the plan. I mean, leading up to that as well, I'm waffling here about, but leading up to that as well, especially since the environment survey was ongoing, I did wonder whether it was viable to keep getting these people from all around the world to, burn carbon to come to a meeting on social surveys. But there's no plans to change that. It does, as I say, function very much like the UN. So they want you there at the assembly. Oh, and there's some comments coming in.
It's just Liza saying hi.
How is Compass so awesome? Compass is awesome in many respects. I think it's mostly the people, Liza. And you are one of them very recently. But I think we do a good job. I think we're the only centre like us in the country. We rely on soft money funding to do all the work that we do, and partnering with other people, like we're partnering with Alice, for instance. But it means we work, as you'll see from the talk today, it means we work on a variety of stuff. We're not always the experts on things, but I think we contribute, which is a good thing. And I would say as well that in the current environment, with a focus on, there was a focus on well-being before COVID, but a focus on how this major disruption is going to affect society, I think, there's going to be lots and lots of work for us going forward. So thank you, Liza, for that question. Yes.
I just got one question. You mentioned IDI.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you use that quite a lot. Well, for a start, is that right? And also, in Auckland, are you the main IDI user? I know it's stats. More about this than me, but is that your perception that if people in Auckland want to talk to an IDI user, will they come to you? It's non-stats.
Yeah, the answer to your first question is yes, we do use the IDI quite a lot at our local data lab. It's kind of us 90% of the time, and some people from economics the other 10% of the time. Are we the biggest users in Auckland? Probably. There's the Gail Pacheco and her group at AUT, who also would be heavy users. There are a few other groups at the University of Auckland, but I don't think they use it quite as much as we do. And yes, we do get approached often for people who are interested in the IDI to find out, various bits and pieces about how to use the IDI. And through the Virtual Health Information Network, which is a group I'm involved with, we're partly funded to help people use health data in the IDI. So we do that. And that also relates to the courses that we run. So Steph, she puts on, she's now part of the team that puts on the IDI course. We also, Eileen is planning for a IDI morning tea that we have, before COVID, it was what, every 2 months, was it? Or every month even? Maybe a bit less frequently, but that's a sort of get together, modern on what they do at the University of Otago, Wellington here. Get together of IDI folk to discuss their issues. Do you know about this? Has anyone worked with this data set? What can you tell us about that sort of thing? So yeah, by all means. And when we had our own data lab, we were forever getting asked by Stats New Zealand, oh, can this person come and use your data lab? Which was fine, and it's still fine to some extent, although it's swipe card, as is the rules of Stats New Zealand, swipe card access now, so it's harder to get a non-university person to use data lab because they have to get a university ID card. But yes, it's a short answer to your question.